Um, we are going to be talking about hotels and their relationships with independent restaurants.
This is an exciting topic.
It's a very exciting topic. Are you not excited about it?
You're going to show me how I should be excited about it, okay? You ready?
Absolutely.
Why don't you grab a microphone? I think this is your mic right here. And introduce your panel.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. My name is Claudia de Brito. I'm a journalist and F&B consultant. Today, as we just mentioned, we'll be talking about hotels and their relationships with independent restaurants versus hotel-managed concepts. First up, I'd like to call Judith Cartwright to the stage. She is the founder and managing director of Black Coral Consulting. Thank you very much for being with us, Judith. Next up, Economides, which a lot of you is a name a lot of you will recognize. She is the executive managing director of M Management. Please take your seat. Wonderful. Next up, Samantha Wood, aka Foodiva. She is an editor, event organizer, and consultant. Thank you for being with us, Samantha. And then we have James Knight Pacheco. He is the host of a very popular podcast, which I haven't been on yet, James. And he's the executive chef of Ami Dubai. Thank you for being with us. And then last but not least, Mr. Kim Barter. Thank you. He is the VP of Food and Beverage for Atlantis Dubai. Great, can we have a round of applause for our panelists, please? Thank you. Wonderful. Okay, sorry, I'm just going to put my... Okay, so as we discussed, we're going to be talking about the relationship between hotels and independent restaurants versus hotel-managed ones. Few people have been here as long as we have, Samantha, in this town. 20-something years?
22.
Okay. It used to be the case that in Dubai, if you wanted to go to a good restaurant, that you'd more likely than not end up in a hotel. Is that still the case?
Absolutely not, actually. And I think if we look at the recent Mina's 50 Best, thanks to you, Claudia, you look at the trend there, and the majority of restaurants that made the cut there were outside hotels and independents as such. So I think that speaks volumes to where we're heading, trend-wise here as well. Yes, you definitely have hotel-operated concepts as well, and I think perhaps we'll touch upon that a little bit later. But yes, I think now very much the independents really champion and the non-independents here. So when people are actually looking where to go and eat, firstly, I think they look for licensed versus unlicensed,
right.
And then location, and then cuisine category. But ultimately, yes, we're heading in that direction, and that's the sign of a maturing scene for sure.
Right. Faye, you are in charge of Mythos, obviously, which a lot of us here love and know. You are based in you lease a space with a hotel. What was behind that decision? Why did you decide to be based in a hotel? At the time when you went, it was pretty, it was in the basement pretty much, it was a bit of a random location. What made you choose that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people at the time we were starting out in our location, a lot of peers have expressed to me over the years, like, we thought, what were you thinking? Where are you going? And a lot of people, came to see the journey through the hotel, which is kind of unique. Right. It wasn't the classic sort of lobby meandering through the hotel and reaching the outlet. There's a very unique sort of access point, which we turned it into a benefit and a unique sort of selling point of a journey, arrival, and sort of entering this world of almost being transported into Greece. So I've also been here, maybe not as long as you guys, but I came here in 2005, looking for real estate for F&B. Lesser known also, obviously now we have brand equity and people know us in the market, but when we were lesser known, trying to find a location that was licensed with a reasonable rent was very challenging. We believed in JLT because of the dynamics of the ecosystem. There's anywhere between 80 to 100,000 people there, between offices, residential, and it's a beautiful community. And there was not a lot of offering at the time in our space. So that's how the journey and the decision actually came to be.
Amazing. So, and it kind of spontaneously became a food hub because then you had, several restaurants within that area, and then, larger JLT neighborhood became a bit of a food hub itself.
Yeah, absolutely, because we have 2 outlets next to each other, NOLA and Mythos, so it drew a lot of footfall to that cluster that we're in and to the hotel. And there was a 3rd outlet as well. It's changed a couple of times, but it's 3 together. And I think some people were encouraged to come to JLT after us because they saw that it's an area which can be successful, and and it's kind of got this. Apart from the license, there's a lot of little F&B places, and a lot of success stories came out of JLT in the F&B industry.
Amazing, thank you. I'm going to come to you, Kim. The Atlantis is a food hub in itself, you could say. Maybe you have some amazing brands, some amazing restaurants there. Was that always the case or was that the aim when you were curating the restaurants that were going in there? Was that something that you wanted to do with the hotel? Was it always something that you knew would draw more people in, not just guests, but also residents? Was that an intentional decision?
Yeah, for myself, I've been here 9 months, so I wasn't necessarily responsible for bringing the restaurants. But I think we always look at, if I look at Atlantis, the Royal, and we look at what the genre of restaurants that we have and where's those missing pieces. I think when you build a large property, it's probably 7-8 years in the making. So it's interesting to see sort of what was there 7 years ago to what it's going to be now. But I think in regards to just making sure that we have good offerings, both, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later on, from a hotel guest, but also from a outside guest as well, because in a number of our restaurants, we import probably 80% of our guests come from outside, even though it's part of the hotel. So I think as a hotel F&B person, I think we also want to have that balance. We know that the all-day dining restaurant is obviously going to naturally gravitate to hotel guests, but the signature restaurant that you obviously go into partnership with and joint venture with, you really want to treat that as a standalone restaurant, because that's really why you partner up with that, that intelligence at the end of the day. Yeah.
And then, Judith, you've worked with Atlantis, you've consulted with them in the past as well. For you, when you're approaching a project like that and you're looking at working with restaurants, sorry, ask the question again. What is the decision? So when you're looking at the curation of a restaurant, what are you thinking? Who do you have in mind, especially at a property like the Atlantis? Who is your target audience, or are you targeting, a wide variety or wide demographic?
So actually, it's a great question, and then it leads up. I used to work for the Atlantis full time, or for Cursor International, and there was one outlet or one venue that was very successful in the beginning, which was the nightclub, which is now the Wave House. And the nightclub, when you looked in comparison to the other restaurants, wasn't as successful anymore because the target audience had changed. And nightclubs sometimes have a very short-lived life. And then we had a look at, what else can we do from that venue? Is it then bowling? Is it cinema? Is it games? And that's how the Wave House was born. And then we had an outside company that helped us to curate it. Okay. And again, we went back down to, what's the location, what is the customer segment that we need to take a look at, and what is it that we can do out of the space. And the Wave House is a multi-purposely built restaurant, and it's busy, it's full, it's easily accessible, it's a great venue, it's Instagrammable, and people talk about it, and they want to come back to it. So when you look at spaces or restaurants, or like how you have done, in JLT, is then how do you create that experience? And it's one thing to have the menu and the offering from a dining perspective, but then again, what is it that you're offering to the end consumer, and how do they come back to the restaurant? What's the overall atmosphere, the experience? You're placed into Greece. I think that was really a great example. And when I went to the restaurant too, that's the first thing that I said to my husband, oh, I feel like I'm in Greece tonight. And then you want to come back. And that's when you don't have to be associated with a hotel, and you can be very successful as an independent venue.
Right. So the venue becomes an attraction in itself.
Exactly, yeah.
So to hotel guests and to guests, to
and
residents
outside
as well.
And that's how you have the storytelling, and then you can, that's how you can promote the restaurant outside. The guests that are coming, they're promoting the restaurant outside, and that's how you then get to know on what's actually happening, and that's how you create the hubs in the destination where you're at.
Great, thank you. James, I'm going to come to you. So as the executive chef at Me Dubai, you have quite an eclectic mix of concepts there. You have a mix of hotel managed, a mix of independent, of leased restaurants. How would you think? Sorry, how do you think that works? And so you have your independent restaurant, so for example, the Main, that already has a following, so you have kind of an anchor there, and then you have your hotel managed restaurants as well. How does that mix come together? Do you think it's a good mix of restaurants at the moment?
Great question. In all honesty, the entire relationship of the hotel within F&B works extremely well. So we have the two giants, as you said, so Rocker, as well as Main, and then we have basically, there's 4 now hotel managed outlets and more to come. In that space itself, the hotel is very small, so it's only 93 keys. Wow. But we have enough space for 15 restaurants in that area. So what essentially the hotel management and the owners would like to do is to have a varied amount of culinary offerings within the hotel, not to keep the two the same. Every concept must be a different genre, number one. Number two, we want to attract the local surrounding area, specifically within Business Bay, in order to make sure that everyone knows the hotel, of course, but also they know what the offerings are and have let's say a mini sort of resort or culinary experience within that space. So for me, it's not kind of that we're fighting for the same thing. We're all complementing each other. And I work very closely with all of the executive chefs of each brand to make sure that we're all aligned. As you can imagine, it's not an easy thing to do when you have so many egos, but I would say it's, but it works very well. And let's not forget that nobody knew the Opus building. They knew of course they knew the late Zaha Hadid, right. But no one knew the Opus or the Me Dubai. So somebody like Rocker or somebody like Joey, when they opened the Main, everyone knew that specific location. So it really helped to build the name of the hotel and the entire brand altogether.
Amazing. And so, sorry, Judith, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, and then the guest doesn't know whether it's part of the hotel or it's not part of the hotel, right. Whether it's independent or not. And I think that's why it's important, to your point, that, then the restaurants, they work together with the hotel team so that I, as the end consumer, don't feel whether it's independent or whether it's part of the hotel.
But I'd actually disagree. I actually think the consumer does know the difference between independent and non-independent.
So I should say shouldn't know.
Right, okay.
The end consumer shouldn't know.
Okay, all right, okay,
Perhaps
fair enough.
the resident knows and the international visitor may not know.
Yeah. I mean, there's only a small percentage of foodies in Dubai. I'd say out of the dining out population, only 20% are foodies, and they will distinguish. But yes, everyone else, and then perhaps travelers coming in that haven't done their research won't. Yeah.
Well, and they shouldn't feel it based on the service delivery, is what I mean. Because, when you go to restaurants or to hotels, and let's say the hotel has a loyalty program, and then you eat and then you pay, oh, sorry, the loyalty programs don't apply for this venue because it's not part of the hotel. That's what I mean. It's, if you're a hotel and you have a variety of outlets, it's, from a guest experience, you shouldn't have to feel that it's not part of the hotel.
What would you say is the distinction, Samantha? You're saying, guests do know or diners do know.
But the foodies do their research. They know what's happening. They follow certain people. They read certain websites. They know where they're going.
Right.
So they do know. And also, I think, on the back of COVID and the whole support local movement globally, and here in the UAE as well, people want to support independence. Every request that I have had in the last couple of years has been, please recommend an independent. We do not want to go to a chain or an imported concept. Now, that doesn't mean that hotel independence in hotels don't fall within that area.
Yeah, this is what I was sorry, I didn't ask the question properly, but what is the distinction then between, kind of a hotel managed concept and an independent concept? Is there a different, you're nodding, James, I think you also have something to say. I'll let you go first.
I'm just going to say one thing. I think the biggest distinction is actually a very obvious one, that they tend to have dedicated entrances.
Okay.
Not always, but that in itself tends to dictate that it's an independent. Yeah, and as we were discussing earlier, it's not the case at Jamir Al Nassim, unfortunately, because that dedicated entrance never came about. But and you have to walk through the hotel lobby.
Yeah. James?
Purely from a chef-led answer, this is that the concepts that I specifically look after, with the training that we give the chefs. Number one, there are no buffets in any of the areas that are within the hotel, so 0 buffets, number one. Number two, I ensure that all of the teams, whether it's restaurants and whether it's the chefs themselves, they must know and understand the difference between a hotel chef and a restaurant a la carte offering. So let's say, for example, on a daily basis, we may have anything from 80 to 130 guests on the breakfast. That's all plated a la carte.
Wow.
Because we want to make sure that we give the guests an incredible dining experience, whether it's from the breakfast or whether it's a fine dining or whether it's the South American concept. For me, from a chef's perspective, I want to compete in a healthy way with Roca and with Maine, and to make sure that, as Samantha said, the foodies of the world, they do come and check us out when possible, to ensure that, this is different. This is not just a hotel. This is actually managed very well.
Right. So it's a hotel managed concept, but with an independent kind of spirit.
Absolutely. I mean, and as you said, it's the building itself, it's one of a kind.
Yeah.
So the expectation of the guests, doesn't matter who you are, when you come in, it's a wow. It's very much like an Atlantis property, where it's not as grand, but it's certainly iconic.
Yeah. Sorry, Kim.
I think it also, from what I've seen in Dubai, there are the sort of hotels with the leased out restaurants that very much are standalone and run on their own sort of 2 feet. And then there's other ones that, like for example, at Atlantis, we own them all. We just really pay a royalty to a brand partner. Mm-hmm. So the staff are all ours, but I think it's super important that we maintain the integrity of the brand. Which sometimes can go a little bit wayward, with the brand. But for us, really, Atlantis and Curzon is that we've made that conscious effort to partner up and bring these brands to our property. But we, I suppose, have a certain amount of control over them. Right. But it's important that we give them the integrity. If not, why do we invest in that brand and bring it to them versus say to a brand, yes, we'd love you to have our property or this location, but you need to do this, and this. We sort of want to position ourselves a little bit differently, and that's sort of what I work with my team on, and we sort of want to have a different management mindset versus the buffet restaurant, which unfortunately we can't do a la carte for 3,000 people a day. It's a little bit challenging, but then it's what is the mindset when you walk into a standalone venue that we really want to position as standalone. So I think recently with obviously the 50 best coming to town, that sort of allowed us to think a little bit differently and see because again those are all accolades that it's great for the team to be part of that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Can I say something
Yes,
on the back
please.
of that? I think we have an example here on stage, 2 examples of hotels that understand branding.
Right.
I mean, if you blindfolded somebody and took them to a hotel room in one of the big chains and unblindfolded them, would they be able to tell you which hotel they're in? I think with Atlantis and me, they probably
Yes,
would.
absolutely.
If somebody blindfolded you, brought you to my restaurant and took off your blindfold, you'd know where you are. So I think hotels who understand the brand, the promise, the authenticity and the soul of each brand can do, manage the outlets as well as independents.
If I can just add one more thing, I think it's
Please.
about the staff as well, the team, because again, in our pursuit of opening a luxury property next door to Atlantis, I'm looking for now team members that want to work for Heston Blumenthal. It just happens to be at Atlantis the Royal, but really I'm looking for somebody that wants to work for Heston Blumenthal or Jose Andreas or Ariana Bundi or Milos or whatever it shall be, rather because that's the clientele that I'm going to surround myself with, rather than the mass recruitment drive that maybe Dubai's known for, and I just become the same as the place next door. So I think it comes down to just more than having the right space and brand integrity. It comes down to the team and the discipline of, sometimes the executive chef going to the Nobu chef and saying, "Why is your food cost 3 points over, but you exceeded the budget by 40%?" There's got to be that balance in between that as well. I think is super important.
So fostering a homegrown scene doesn't always necessarily need to mean the concept. It can mean the talent as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think from a talent perspective, I mean, I think it's important, and I think it was mentioned before about complementing. We have a lot of brand partners, of course, but we also want to have our own talent, and we don't have every single restaurant. And remember, those are a brand.
Right.
Those chefs are not here, as we know, all the time. They happen to, they're the one, the chef de cuisine or the executive chef for that brand they're the face of the brand here
Right.
in Dubai, and that's what is important as well. So yeah, I think there can definitely be homegrown talent for sure.
Amazing. James, I'm gonna come to you. Do hotels have a role in fostering homegrown talent, be it concepts, be it people? Do you see yourself as a fosterer of talent?
Do I see myself as a fosterer of talent? What a question. No, so I 100% believe that hotels, again, within Dubai, within the UAE, we should. Why not? So currently I'm fostering three concepts which are within the hotel, all very, very different. And Kim, you made a great point, is that the integrity of all of the brands should all marry each other. And it's super important to make sure that every single brand within the hotel has its own soul, has its own life. And as you quite rightly said, when you're going to come into the hotel and you take your blindfold off, you don't know where you are. I think it's an absolute key. And let's not forget that in regards to the teams nowadays, not everybody wants to be working front of house, back of house, 12 hours a day. So it's super important to harbour that talent in order for them to all be in the top 50,
Right.
especially here.
Yeah. And to your point with brands and, having a chef who's not here a lot of the time, is there ever the conversation of maybe going towards a more chef-led approach to F&B? Or
As opposed to a brand one?
yes, yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. We have a restaurant Oceano where we have, Chef Gregoire has recently returned, and ultimately, this is his restaurant. And it's no different to the new chef we've just brought in from Las Vegas in Seafire. So now that becomes his restaurant. Obviously, they're in different stages. I think with the brand partners for us is some of these companies are now becoming so big. You would think that, we've got all these brand partners, they would naturally just send a team of a head chef. We've actually hired a number of people outside of that brand because we have an expectation of the brand in Dubai and the brand in our property as well, which could be different to downtown Chicago or New York or Miami. and that as well. So I think that's super important. But I think there just always has to be that balance. And I think if there is that balance, you do import that amount of local talent, but also local guests as well, for sure.
Brilliant. Great to know that Gregoire is back at Oceano
it's
as well.
very exciting. We've got a lot of great things. I'm looking forward to working with him.
You heard it here first.
I know, breaking news, guys.
Yeah, I don't know if the press release. I don't know if Rebecca's put the press release out yet. I'm not too sure. Maybe anyway. He did Valentine's Day last night, so he's into it already.
Wonderful. Samantha, are we starting to see more homegrown restaurants in hotels?
Yes, 100%. I mean, you're speaking to the person that only supports homegrown. But yeah, I think we've actually seen a little bit of a trend as a result of COVID. You've seen hotels that had to close their F&B use the opportunity to revamp. So a couple of examples, Jumeirah, especially the Madinat Jumeirah JBH complex there. You've seen some complete revamps there as well. Bastion's a fantastic new concept there. Back at Ritz-Carlton JBR, remember the little palm grill? That's now Tomoka, completely unrecognizable. And actually what's interesting with this one, in contrast to the other Jumeirah concepts, is they've actually placed a dedicated team, chef, front of house, just for that restaurant. But it is managed by the hotel, and they're fantastic. And I know we're going to see a lot more coming up, so that will be really interesting to watch and to help balance out the complete independence as well.
Amazing. James, you said you have space for 15 concepts at your property. Do you want to do some breaking news as well, or? No?
We're currently breaking the ground for some more. So no, but it's just an interesting, because when you look at the building itself, everybody thinks that the hotel is at the top, but actually it's the first 4 floors, and the rest is all. We've got 175 offices there, and we're currently about to go live with 100 residences, as well as the rooftop, and we have a nightclub underneath.
Wow.
Believe it or not. So it's quite a unique space.
Okay, so watch the space.
Nothing for the media to write about just yet. No, I had to sign an NDA. So.
Okay. Judith, I'm going to come back to you. In terms of, obviously, we are running businesses here, and in terms of revenues, independent restaurants do have a role to play in terms of driving revenues to hotels. Do you want to talk to me a little bit about what we can do in terms of what hotels can do, or consultants like you can do, in terms of strategy and helping those restaurants to drive revenue for those hotels?
Yeah, good question. It's no longer about the Excel spreadsheets. But when you look at hotels and revenue optimization, what I found from various restaurants that have opened up is that the space is so important. And how do you optimize the space that you have available? How many tables can you fit in? How many chairs? And how flexible and adaptable are they to the audience that's coming in to eat? When I work with restaurants or with hotels, I help them to implement the total revenue management culture. So that's where the data and the science works together from an operational set of things. And Kim, I hope you can attest to that with the total revenue management culture that we've been able to build at the Atlantis. It's about that the systems are set up correctly. And you know, when you talk about brands, and I've seen independent restaurants set up their amazing outlet, amazing brands, amazing concept, but then revenues are left on the table because they're not being optimized. It's either that the restaurant reservation system isn't set up correctly, that the meal periods might not coincide or might not reflect how long people are actually eating. It's also protecting your revenues from when they come in. When you book restaurants, some now that are busy, they have started to implement that you have to give your credit card when you make your booking, that you're charged a penalty when you no-show or when you reduce your attendee size or your participant size, your pack size. It's very widely accepted when you book your airline ticket or when you book your hotel. But for restaurants, there is still some sort of shyness about it. If restaurants choose not to implement that, then they can see, okay, how much do I actually want to overbook my tables, and how many more reservations do I want to take, because I know I have a certain no-show factor. When you look then from a chef's side, from a menu engineering perspective, how do you manage your food cost? And how is that put in? How is the menu laid out? I posted something on LinkedIn yesterday, which was a perfect example that I saw at the right market in terms of decoy pricing. How do you get your end consumer to choose from the menu what you want to sell and at what price point? And I mean, it's endless. But if you get then your operations team to work together with the analytical teams, and hotels are starting to implement that. But when you think that also from hotels, that 40% of the revenues is coming from F&B, is not always optimized. There's a lot more that can be done when it's done correctly. And you do have now business intelligence tools that you can implement, where you get your data available on your phone, and I'm sure you have this in place, for your restaurants as well. But that way, you can really manage the business that's coming in.
Would you agree with that, Kim? Would you agree with the fact that...
No, definitely. I think when you look at these again, it's one thing having a brand and the team and all the things that go well, but ultimately you have a financial return to give to the owning company and the shareholders and that as well. So I think from a revenue management perspective, we've got a great setup at Atlantis for sure. It's now just making sure that we don't take the personality away from it. Dubai is a pretty expensive place to dine and drink and entertain and go out. It's just, and we obviously cater to all walks of life, from hotel guests to non-hotel guests and day visitors and that as well. And it's just looking at what is that value for money. A lobster, in my opinion, can be value for money as long as it's part of, it's a great quality lobster. It was served with great service. The ambience was great in the restaurant. The arrival experience was good. The departure experience was good. And then I walked out and said, okay, I spent a little bit more than I thought I would, but what a great time. Would I go back? Absolutely. So then I think that's important as well,
right,
from that as well. And yeah, we have many tools and looking at that as well. And, I think it's always encouraging from a general manager or a chef de cuisine. What we do is, this is your business. Mm-hmm. You are responsible for it, and you're ultimately responsible for managing a multi-million-dollar business, but you don't have to pay the bills. And how can we help you to be one day your own boss? And I think that's nice for people in our industry as well. Yeah.
Amazing, brilliant. We're running short on time, unfortunately. So I'm going to skip towards the end. Faye, if you were to open another restaurant now, which you probably have one in the works, I don't know. Breaking news?
No comment for the media.
Okay.
I need to take back what I said about
Where would you base it?
I mean, there's a lot of choice nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of brings the whole discussion to, do you tailor a concept to a location that comes up as an opportunity, or do you have a concept in mind and then look for the right location? From a business perspective, it's generally, we usually look for the location first. And if the location inspires us, then we look at the ecosystem, what's around it, what is the property like, what is the potential, and adapt. I think that for us that works better than having a concept in mind and then going to hunt for the right location. But there's a lot of choice. You have neighborhoods, beach properties, the Palm Jumeirah, there's a lot. Having been here since 2005, the choices that I had back then and the choices that are there now are really amazing. And actually, homegrowns with brand equity that we've been talking about all night, all afternoon.
It's dark.
A little tired.
Yeah.
Are given a lot of opportunities nowadays. I think a lot of hotels and a lot of asset managers want to work with the homegrowns to see how they can support growth.
Growth, exactly. Samantha, I'll ask you the same question. If you were advising a restaurant on where to open,
I think it depends on unlicensed versus licensed. I think with a licensed concept, people are less willing to travel to further destinations. So I think likes of DIFC, hands down. I think what you've done with you were one of the first in JLT, so you created a destination for Mythos and for Nola there. But if it's unlicensed, I think you can go be a little bit more obscure. And again, going back to 50 Best, you look at 3 of the unlicensed location, 3 fills, the winner in Jumeirah Fishing Village. Who would have thought? Fantastic accolade for them. You look at Orfali and Reefs, again, obscure mall locations. And they've made those respective malls dining destinations as well. So I think it really, really depends. But you can't go wrong, obviously, with sort of big hubs. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. James, I'll ask you, if in one of those 15 spaces that you have, what would be your ideal? I'm going to try and get something out of you. What would be your ideal kind of concept?
For me, it would.
What's missing in the mix?
So we have an incredible space within the hotel that if it was up to me, it would be very much kind of same thing that Tressin Studio are doing, very much chef-led, 12-course, that sort of thing, a journey. I think that's what's missing specifically within our hotel. That's what's really missing. We've got the monsters there,
right.
But for me, I much more prefer something more intimate and more chef-led and super homegrown.
Okay, and that's opening.
I'll let you know.
Just to wrap it up, Judith, can you talk to me about maybe trends, how you see this relationship kind of going forward in the future, the relationship between hotels and restaurants, and how they can be mutually beneficial, how they can be more mutually beneficial than they are now going forward?
I think it just comes back to the overall experience that guests have and the human connection that people are looking now more so than ever. In terms of trends, you'll see a lot more, family sharing restaurants, homegrown, and there's a big campaign now here in Dubai as well with local homegrown food that's then, brought to restaurants and onto the menus. In terms of revenue optimization specifically, there is a lot that restaurants and hotels can learn from one another, work together, and it comes back to then again the employees and how they're being trained to make sure that the customer journey from the beginning, from when the restaurant is booked until the customer then ends, is flawless from one end to another. Trends then in terms of licensed versus unlicensed. I think the trend will be always more towards the licensed places, especially then when it comes to the evening meals and for the international markets. And in terms of food and concepts, it's, here in Dubai, it's such an amazing place, and, there is nothing that you cannot get here. And I think it's probably a challenge to establish new concepts and bring them into the market. And hats off to you for creating these destinations in various places. But yeah, I think Dubai is an amazing playground to have that going. Yeah.
Faye, what about you? Thank you, Judith.
I think there's a potential also to be explored in terms of scaling internationally between restaurants and hotels, because smaller independents looking to enter other markets can benefit from operational support if they choose hotel locations in different markets where they don't have to have such a strong presence to do the supporting. Obviously the F&B operation will be theirs, but things like IT or maintenance or housekeeping or other functions that can be handled by the hotel. So I think that will be something that we see going forward, brands maybe going into other markets within hotels that can offer them support.
Yeah, things that they don't have to think about, and they can just concentrate on making lovely food for diners. What about you, Samantha? What do you see going forward?
Can I respond to that in terms of a wish list? Just one.
All right.
Go
yes.
on. Because we've already spoken, I've already
Okay.
spoken about the trend of hotel-operated concepts.
Fine.
But the one thing, and I've said this on various panels before, so apologies to those that have attended previous ones, but what we really, really need to see here, and I throw the mantle to all you guys here, is we need a high-end licensed modern Middle Eastern concept. The likes of Kubara, which sadly closed down, perhaps wrong location. If that had been in DIFC, it probably would still be there. But we really do, you're beginning to see it with the likes of Orfali now, but they're not licensed. And as you said, unfortunately here, because of alcohol regulations, unlicensed does trump unlicensed. So that really will help set the scene. We have Ninive, again, we need something a little bit more avant-garde as well. So yeah, definitely that's what I really would like to see over the next 2 years, if possible.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for not answering my question. But very valid point. More modern Middle Eastern. What about you, James, in terms of trends? How do you see the relationship going forward?
I think now it's more super local, if I'm honest. All of everybody who I spoke to now is all about local trends. They don't necessarily tell their suppliers what they want. They want to speak, you tell me as a supplier what's best within that season, and I will use it. So very much what Rami is doing, all of the farms, the fish farm, for me, when I'm talking to all of the different chains within hospitality,
Yeah.
everything is local and homegrown, and that's the definitive thing that everybody wants to push now.
Amazing. Kim, final word?
Yeah, I think in regards to, I would say social dining, I think is a big thing. I mean, everybody's sort of been confined to their homes over the last couple of years, so I think people want to have fun when they go out, be it communal or be it, just a high energy space other than that place where you don't feel comfortable and that as well. So I think that part, I think even though we talk about the alcohol being allowed, we're seeing a lot more. The ABV movement and non-alcoholic beverages are coming really, really strong. So I think there's definitely an opportunity to have those in there. And for us, we see sort of more the vegan and vegetarian movement. I think that's important as well, especially when you obviously have a diverse clientele. So I think those are important for us as well.
Brilliant. Guys, thank you very, very much for a really fascinating panel. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you, everyone.